Happy Teaching Tips Thursday, Moms and Master Books. It's Randy. I'm here with my wife, Kristen, and we have a special guest this morning, Dyan Gay, and I'm going to give the backstory. Thank you for joining us, Dyan. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Thank you, Kristen, for joining me. Let me give the backstory. So one night I ended up answering the phone in the office. I don't typically answer the phone, but I did in this case. And it was Dyan, and she was trying to place an order for the school year for her kids. And so as she began talking, she told me a little bit of her story. And I was quite moved by it. In fact, as I mentioned in the promotion of this, there were times where I was having a hard time being part of the conversation because it was hard to maintain composure. So as we talk about this story, I did two things today. Number one, I do have a tissue box. Number two, I have Kristen. And I said, Kristen is much better at maintaining composure. But also the heart of this message today is about homeschooling through hard times. And so I have two very strong moms here who are going through hard times. One who's going through a cancer journey, and Dyan, who's gone through a tragedy and had to work through grief and everything while homeschooling a very large family. And so as an encouragement to this community, but also as a challenge to all of us, I thought this would be a really good discussion. So Dyan was explaining her story, and it really moved me. And so in order to have this discussion, I thought this would be a great place to really to do this. So Dyan, how many kids do you have?
Okay, so we adopted 13 total. I've got 3 that have moved out of the house, and then I have my daughter that joined Jesus, and so I have 9 in home right now.
Wow. So the night, well, explain to me, what were you doing on the road? What was happening in your life at that time?
Okay, we were moving. We had identified a house that we wanted to see in Arkansas. We have animals and horses, and we feel like the kids do better when they can play a lot in the dirt. And so we're not able to do that as well in the city, and so we wanted to move to a country life. We were traveling on the I-40 through Amarillo, Texas. Kevin and I would switch driving every 4 hours. We had just switched. I had driven for about 10 miles. And then, and the road was empty. We had just passed a diesel truck. And then all of a sudden there was a set of headlights in my side view mirror. And I said, Kevin, they're coming up quick. And right then we were slammed. And immediately, I was in a car accident in 1999, and so I know that like when people relax completely, they don't get as hurt. And so in my head, I said, God be here with us, hold us in your hands. And then I said, limp fish, right? Because I wanted to make sure I didn't get hurt. So I literally let the vehicle throw me wherever it was going to throw me. I felt like I was flying at that point in time, and we rolled down an embankment. I felt the vehicle roll and land on, I didn't know that we had landed on a frontage road, but that's where we had landed. And I just started calling out to my kids. I yelled for Kevin a few times, and I thought, he must be unconscious somewhere. And I started saying, hey, Carissa, mommy loves you. Carissa, where are you? And just starting to go down a whole list of my kids' names saying, mommy loves you. Lily, where are you? Mommy loves you. Emmy, where are you? And so then I could know who's awake, who's, and try to get an idea of who I had. That was a night. Yesterday was the 18-month mark. And so it was a big day. But as that was happening, I was a truck driver, the truck driver that we had passed on the road previously. He came up and I started just handing my kids out the side of the vehicle to him. And he's like, how many passengers do you have? And I'm like, myself, my husband, and 10 children. And he's like, 10 kids, oh my gosh. And I'm like, take them. and I'm passing them out the window. The car was still running. I had to turn off the ignition. I'd lost my glasses. That was a God thing. I never saw any of my children at their worst. I never saw anybody intubating them. I think that because I was physically unable to see, my faith was able to see through all of it. And so it didn't matter what the physical picture looked like. So the emergency crews started showing up, and the captain said, it's okay, we're here. And I kind of snapped back at him. I said, I'm glad you're here, but none of this is okay. And
that's something I would say. That's why he's laughing. I would absolutely say that. In fact, I said that to my cancer doctor. She said to me, fair enough. And I said, none of this is fair.
right.
Yeah. So that's why he's laughing, not because of the situation, but yeah.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right in that.
It's not okay. And so I got out of the vehicle and I started to try to eyeball my kids that had been pulled from the vehicle. And I'm going, okay, there's that one, and I'm not feeling like I have everybody. The fire chief came up to me and he's like, ma'am, there's 2 fatalities. And I said, okay, but the other driver had passengers, right? Like, he's like, no, he was by himself. And I'm like, who do you have? He goes, well, your husband and your daughter. And I said, no, take me to see them. He says, I can't, I don't do that. I've done this for 17 years and I don't take people to do this on scene. And I said, you don't understand. I'm a mama and I need a head count. So show me. So he walked me over and he said, ma'am, are those your husband's shoes? And he was covered from his knees up. And I said, yes. And he said, and that's your little girl. I have 10 little girls. So I said, that doesn't work. I said, my little girls that are that size, because she looked very small, I said, are all accounted for. And he said, well, she wears a purple bracelet. I said, oh, my kids switch their jewelry. That doesn't mean anything. So they picked up the tarp and I could see enough to see the shirt that she was wearing, and it said nothing but positive vibes. And I said, that's my Averly. I said to him, I said, you know, my husband would do anything in this world to be with me. What can you do? You guys need to be working on him. What can you do? He said, ma'am, it took us 8 minutes to get here, and we have to work on your children that have a chance. So I talked with Kevin for a few minutes, and I told him that I'm not mad, and we got this, and it's going to work. It's going to be okay. I told him to not leave us. And then I looked at the captain and I said, who else am I going to lose tonight? And he said, well, you've got your little boy over there. And I'm like, oh, that's Jaden. And he said, and you've got a little girl who we found in the brush over there. And I'm like, that's Brinley. And I said, thank you for letting me know how to pray, right? So I just started praying real loud and speaking in tongues, and they probably thought I'd lost it by then, but I was actually more in tune than ever. And I stood in the middle, and it felt like I was in the middle of a clock. And I had everything around me because I've got kids scattered all over and emergency crews all over the place. And I am the middle, and I'm just yelling to my kids, these are mommy's friends. You listen to them. You do what they say. Pay attention, and mommy's going to meet you at the hospital. It's going to be as best, it's going to be okay. We're going to make it. Now just listen to what needs to happen and listen to your people. I told the fire chief, I said, no matter what, I'm the last person that leaves this scene. You get all of my kids out of here first. You start treating my kids at the hospital. I'm the last person. They had me sit down in the ambulance, and I said, take my blood pressure. I feel like I'm going into shock a little bit. Give me some blankets. I'm like, this is what my blood pressure usually runs. Clearly I'm running high. Take my blood pressure in 2 minutes. I was very sound. And I heard helicopters leave. I heard all of these things happen, and I knew that they were starting to clear it out. They came back to my ambulance, and they said, okay, we're ready to take you now. I said, all of my children are gone, correct? They said, yes, they're all being treated. I said, okay, we can go now. The ambulance driver came to the front, and she says, my name is Faith, and I'll be taking you to the hospital. And that was a really big deal, just that her name was Faith. And she got me there to the hospital. I was pretty, I was watching out the back window for headlights, because, I'm now totally PTSD for headlights. And we got there, and that woman that named Faith took me everywhere, and I got to see most of my kids as best I could without glasses. I was without glasses for 2 days. It was all God's divine plan. And right before, she said, I'm going to have to go on another call. I'm going to have to leave. And I said, that's okay, but you're going to pray with me first. Now, I didn't know her salvation or anything. I'm like, your name's Faith, so you better pray with me. I said, I need strength because I have to tell my kids that their dad and their sister went with Jesus. And so she prayed with me, and then I started finding out exactly what had happened to my kids physically. So they started taking to my kids one by one. My youngest had a bruised nose. I had two with some leg injuries, one with a sprained ankle. I had a son with one broken leg, his hip was fractured, a very large amount of skin had been taken out of his hand. I had a broken shoulder blade on one of my little girls. One of my daughters had a lot of meat taken out of her arm. Her arm got caught under the vehicle as we rolled. My daughter, Brinley, her intestines she had been cut from her groin all the way up her side to the middle of her back between her shoulder blades. And her intestines were out, and they weren't sure she was going to make it. And then my son, Jaden, got a severe traumatic brain injury. His eyes are fixed and dilated at the scene, fixed and dilated at the hospital. When I saw him, they told me to go ahead and say goodbye. He wasn't going to make it on the 5-hour flight to Dallas. They were looking for his feet at the wreck, and they found his feet actually tucked up behind his legs because he'd had a internal amputation. And so his seat had hit the seat in front of him, and his legs were hanging down, and that caused them both to break all the way through. So he was gonna go have his legs worked on in Dallas, and they said he's not gonna make it. And I just said to him, I said, Jaden, listen, if you wanna go be with Jesus and Daddy and Aberly, you can do that, baby. That's your choice. I said, if you wanna stay and fight, Mommy's gonna fight with you. It's gonna be the Mommy and Jaden team, and I will fight with you every step, and we will do it. The next months were just a series of miracles. They said he was gonna lose both legs. There was no way to save him. Then a doctor said, well, maybe we can save one, and then he came out of surgery and both of them were saved. A doctor called, I said, well, then God intends for him to walk. Why else would he save him? If I'm gonna be picking him up from the bed to the wheelchair, God's not gonna want that extra weight on him. So praise God, we're gonna walk. We had a time where they called me and told me that they needed me to pull the plug. And his brain was swelling too much, and they couldn't even get it down by washing saline and water or salt all over it. And then they called me and said, our hospital lost power last night. The generators went down, and his monitor is no longer speaking to the computers. So we have to replace the monitor. I said, all right, ma'am, in the name of Jesus, you're gonna pull out all of those high numbers. And so when you pull that out, just know in the name of Jesus, we're not gonna see any high numbers anymore. And she's like, okay, that sounds like a great idea, right? So she said that it was gonna be a 20-minute phone call or a 20-minute procedure. And she called me back 4 hours later. I'm like, is he okay? What's going on? And she said, ma'am, I just had to be sure. But before we pulled that monitor out, he was at 23, and currently he's at 9, and it just keeps going down. And I just wanted to be sure before I called you back. I said, well, it won't reach the double digits again. We're good. So we just had miracle after miracle like that. Brindley was walking within probably 2 days after having 97 staples placed in her body to put her back together. We had a colostomy bag for 6 months, and then they were able to remove that. She actually had metal penetrate her rectum, and they weren't sure that she was ever going to be able to use the restroom again normally. That healed up without, I mean, we waited 6 months for it to heal, but it's healed. She's got full function. Yesterday she did a front tuck at gymnastics, so she's doing really well. Jaden's right side of his brain was blown. And they said he was going to be a vegetable. So we got him home from the hospital after 135 days in the hospital. We get him home, and he starts doing stuff. And so I have a nonverbal, non-ambulatory 13-year-old son right now. This kid can do some sign language. He can write. He can read. He can do math. He's funny. He's got a personality like you wouldn't believe. He's coming along. It's a very, very slow journey. Mm-hmm. But he's on his way. He's on his way. I feel like God just needs a bigger audience for the miracles that are going to happen. It's going to be good. I'm so privileged to be a part of it. Well, so a lot of people started asking me in the beginning, am I going to send him to school now? I said, it's going to be easier if you send him to school. Look how bad Jaden is. you're doing this by yourself now. I said, I'm not doing this by myself. I'm doing this with God, and Kevin's with me. And I said, no. My daughter, Averly, that passed in the wreck, was the reason why we were homeschooling everybody. She came home from school one day crying. She'd gotten in trouble because she was singing Ed Sheeran, I'm in love with the shape of you. And we don't do that in our house. And I just looked at her and I said, sweetheart, you can't be singing these songs. And she said, Mom, they play them on the bus. It just gets stuck in my head. And she said, she just looked at me real plain and she said, Mom, it's so hard to be the light in the middle of all this darkness. And immediately it came to me, I have not equipped my kids. I've not equipped them, and I'm sending them out in this world from 7 to 3, and they come home and they have to do an hour of homework, and I'm trying to get dinner going, and I'm trying to get baths going, and bedtime 7 o'clock so they can do it again tomorrow. And I've got 4 hours with my kids that's a rush, and I can't equip them. I can't do it right. And so I got on the phone with Kevin immediately. I said, we're homeschooling all the kids next year. He goes, great, I support you. But really, that's it. I support you.
You go, girl.
Yes. That's it. I support you. And so I did it, and we were working, and when the wreck happened, most of our curriculum was in the vehicle, and we were not using Master Books yet, and I think that was one of the benefits that came out of it, is that all of that curriculum was destroyed, and I had to go looking for something different, and that's what brought me to Master Books, and so that was a blessing. We went really light. I couldn't monitor. I mean, I was in the hospital with Jaden every day. I had to take 5 little girls with me to sit in the hospital for 12 hours a day. We did what we could of schoolwork in between the doctors coming in and out, in between surgeries happening. I had some friends take my older kids for the summer for camps and stuff. And I was blessed to have a really good network of people to be able to just love on us during that time, the initial time after the wreck, until the dust sort of settled. I mean, really, it's just a different type of storm each day. I feel like I had to really surrender. I had to surrender my ideas of what was supposed to be, and I had to accept what was reality and what was going to be okay for my kids that day. There were days that they're super grieving, and guess what? Math's not appropriate when you're super grieving. It's not going to stick. Mm-hmm. And I just had to accept that day we were going to learn compassion. That day we were going to learn how to cry, and it's not bad. We have rules in our house. When you get to cry? Whenever you want. That's it. We're allowed to be upset, but we're not allowed to be mean to one another. We don't get to take this out on each other. We're allowed to have big feelings, but we're not allowed to rip people down with them. The lessons changed. The lessons changed to, let's try and see how God can help you through this moment. How can mommy help you through this moment? Let's identify feelings. I feel as if I had to grow through that too, because there was a lot of like, you're tough, you can do this. And then I was just like, I'm not tough. I don't know that I can do this. This is ridiculous that this would be placed on a person. And so I really started to just pray and, God, what are you, like, I get that this 19-year-old drunk driver hit us, and and we became a consequence of his sin. Please help me out here. And God just spoke to me, and he said something to me that I have to live by and I have to believe, right? Because he spoke to me, so it's the truth. And he said, you are equipped for your journey. That was big right there. That was big. God knew everything that was going to happen. He knew that he placed a calling on for me to do homeschooling for my kids. I accepted that calling. He knew what was coming down the road. And he didn't release me from the calling. He didn't do that. He just says, I've equipped you for your journey. And I sat down and I thought about it. I cried. And I thanked him. And then I said, but I don't have to like it. And I don't. I don't have to like this.
Right.
I can still do my best. I can still give it to God every day. I wake up every morning and I say, good morning, Kevin. Good morning, Averly. Hang with us. If we're going to a park, I'm like, Averly, it's going to be so much fun. If I'm having a problem with one of the kids, I'm like, Kevin, tell me what you would say to him with this. Tell me what you would say. I tell God, you said that I'm equipped for this. I don't feel like that. I feel really ganged up on. I mean, I have a small army that can really plot against me. I talked with the Holy Spirit at the beginning of this. I said, I will keep my focus on you. You need to be my eyes where I cannot be. I have woken up at 10 o'clock at night to feel a feeling inside of me. And I get up and I go check that feeling out, and I am catching my kids doing stuff. I said, God is the best tattletale. You can't hide from him. And mommy's got a special connection. So don't do it. Just don't do it. God will tell. There's some really hard days. My kids all fall on this. I've got 5 kids on the spectrum. So we go into Walmart with headphones on our ears and sunglasses, and we look like we're quite a crew, I bet. But it's our crew, so we're used to it. There are days where they're laying on the ground, kicking and screaming in the Barnes and Noble, and we just get through it. We get through it moment by moment. I think some of my best moments have come when I have stopped myself and actually pretended like they were somebody else's kids. Right? You have patience for somebody else's kids, don't you? A mom can be completely frustrated, and you can walk in and see with new eyes what you need to do to get them through that math problem, or a new concept for reading a word or something like that. You make a new game out of it, and all of a sudden that child's perspective gets to be transformed because new eyes walked in. And so there are moments where my kids are losing it, and I'm close to joining them. And I simply just say, God, give me new eyes right now. What would I do if this is somebody else's kid? How would I walk in with brand new patience, brand new eyes for the situation? What do I need to do? And that helps. That really helps to just go, okay, remove myself. What would I do for somebody else's child in this? And I think that's a gift from God, to be able to come up with a concept that's so simple, and then it works.
Now, in the commitment to homeschool, so how many years did you homeschool before the accident? Or how long had you been homeschooling?
Okay, so I'm going to correct you, and it wasn't an accident, it was a wreck.
Okay.
And that's a verbiage for me that I have to use, because drunk driving is not an accident, it's a choice.
Okay, yep.
It's true.
And so that's part of me educating people, right? Of
Yep.
saying, hey, this is a problem that we've got to fix. I had kids do K-12.
Okay.
And so I wasn't really teaching them. I was like, you're here at home, but you're this teacher's responsibility, right? So I had done homeschooling for 1.5 years prior to the wreck, but we had only done it from August and the wreck was in February, with everybody at home. So I was homeschooling 10 for only 6 months.
Okay.
When the wreck had happened. But I felt really, you know what, I felt like I had no grip on this whatsoever. I was reaching and grabbing for different curriculums all over the place. I've got kids, I've got some kids that are super smart and they're going to pick it up right away and school comes very easily to them. And I've got others that have a very slow retention, and it's work.
Right.
It's not easy, and there's days where I don't even know how to make it fun, but we've just got to move through it. And so I had felt as if before the wreck I didn't have it as together as I do now. A lot of it has to do with the curriculum with Master Books and how easy it's laid out. And I've got the kids where I go look on your page and tell me what you're supposed to do today. Like, I'm trying to give them empowerment, and it gives them the ability to grow and to see, you know, they're like, I did 2 days today, Mom. They get to own it. They get to be empowered by their schoolwork. They can't do that in a public setting. They can't get ahead because it's regulated for them.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
They're done with school quicker. That we get to do other things. Yesterday, we took part of the day off. We got to go and do first day of school pictures. And I didn't know at the end, until the end, that the place said no photography. It was really pretty.
Well, I think one of the things that, you know, we've been homeschooling a long time, and as a family, there are seasons, and we say seasons on purpose because I want people to know that seasons don't last forever. They change. And
Absolutely.
and we're living a season, and you're living seasons, and they're changing. And it doesn't mean that the past season doesn't impact us and we don't carry it forward, and the memories and all of that, but the seasons do change. And curriculum so often has the opportunity to just overwhelm and burden a family in the middle of a season. And so a lot of what we wanted with Master Books and the genius that Kristen brought with the development was removing those friction points that overwhelm and burden a family. But then also you have to do what you did, which is give yourself permission to say, you know what, today we're going to learn how to cry, and we're going to learn emotions, because that's what life is. And we're going to learn what it's like to grieve, and we're going to learn what it's like to heal, because that's what life is. And we're going to learn to help other people in this, which you told me the story of a paramedic that came. Can you share that story?
Yes. I had this paramedic. He's a firefighter. He was sending me messages. I still have contact with a lot of our first responders. And he sent me a message, and I said, well, I'm headed off to church. And he says, since your wreck, I don't go to church. I'm mad at God. I'm mad. And I've not been mad at God for a moment through all this. Like, this is not God. That's not what happened here. And he goes, no, I'm mad at God for allowing this to happen to your family. Your family is so amazing and beautiful, and I'm mad at God for this happening. And I said, God, let me let me say this to him in a way that's going to help him understand. I said, if you are renting a house and a bunch of kids come over and throw rocks in all of your windows, I said, are you mad at your landlord? And he says, no, it's not the landlord's fault. And I said, you call the landlord and you say, help me out with this, right? He was like, yeah. I said, that's the same with earth. God's our landlord. What happens on this earth is circumstances of the earth. It's circumstances of choices that very fallible humans have made. I mean, that's what it is. But we have the opportunity to go talk to our landlord about it and explain to him what's going on, and he's going to help us through it. That doesn't mean he prevents the windows from being broke all the time. That doesn't mean that bad things are not going to happen to us. It simply means that we've got the best landlord in the world and out of this world to refer to go to. And he said, I've not thought about it like that. And he said, that's what helped me. That's what helped me. He's like, I'm going to church. I've got to do this. I got to talk to God about some things I've been thinking, right? And that's the way I have to look at this. We're on this planet where we have just messed it all up, and we mess it up with sin every day, and we mess it up with choices, and the kids have asked me, Mom, why didn't God just take away his choice? Why didn't he take away his choice to drink? Why didn't he take away his keys that night? Why didn't he lose his keys? And I said, we're not going to know everything. We're not. Mm-hmm. I said, however, our job is not to look in the past and see all of the different choices that could have been made in order for our circumstance to not have existed. Our job now is to see that our job's not over, and that there's a journey, and there's things that we need to still accomplish. And if it's bringing light to Jesus, if it's making sure that there's one less drunk driver on the road because of sharing that story, if it's, now here's what I believe Jane's going to be completely healed. And I actually believe that Jane had an experience in heaven, and that one day I am going to be so blessed as to be his chauffeur and take him from church to church so that he can share his experience. That's what I see, and I am so honored to be that puzzle piece. And so I think that we're all we are all a piece of this giant puzzle, and for us God made me equipped. No matter what, I'm equipped for this, and I have my power in it, and I don't have to like it. But I'm still held accountable to do my best.
Right.
And my best today may be very different tomorrow. My best gets to be different for every single day. My 100% might be sitting in my bed with ice cream for the day. That might be my 100%. Was surrounded by a pile of children. And so, but I make a lot more allowances for myself to be human now. Before it wasn't like that for me. Before I was very much this is how this day is supposed to go. The ideas of supposed to. It's very dangerous. Your expectations for how things are supposed to be bring in an idea of things not being fair, of things not being, and the idea of not fair is just your idea of what was supposed to happen, and it didn't. And so we have all these expectations, and I feel like my expectations, it's not that I don't have any, it's that I make allowances for being human through it. And so when I'm feeling overwhelmed with the kids that day or something, I just sit and I think, okay, maybe this is today's best. And that's going to be okay. And if I see a place where they've had a meltdown and we've gotten an hour past it and things are better, then I can go back and revisit and see if they're ready to work with the schoolwork, or if they're ready to re-engage and learn it. But sitting there and trying to force them through it when they're just not there emotionally, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
And so we've just made allowances for being human.
That's good. Well, I got one more question for you, but before I do, I'm going to just Master Books has this resource that Ken Ham wrote, How Could a Loving God? And we had served in pastoring, and I think you were pastoring as well. Is that right?
My husband, yeah.
Okay. That sounds like an answer that Kristen would give.
I support him.
That's what Kristen would be like, I support you, but I'm not a pastor's wife. So,
Title only.
Yeah. But we went through some tragedies with families, and you really don't always have an answer, especially when people are like the paramedic crying out and saying, the sovereignty of God, I just don't understand. Understanding how things could happen and how loving God and having a response. This book is one of the best resources that I've had to be able to say, we live in a fallen world, and I can only imagine. I'm going to try to do this without crying, because I've chewed my gum really hard through this, and I've like wanted to punch Kristen's leg because,
Punch your own leg, not mine. I'll punch back.
Yeah, no, she won't. So, but what I see in that moment of the wreck is the father's expression when man sinned and all of creation came apart. And when you were describing to me the situation of all this chaos is going on around you, and the helicopters are landing, and your kids are broken, and your husband is gone, and all these things, and you were saying, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. These are my friends, and that's the picture of the gospel, right? We experience the sufferings of Christ so we can relate to others. That's the gospel. When man sinned, it all came apart. And I can only picture God saying, it's okay, it's okay. And as he introduces us to Jesus, saying, it's okay, here's my son, it's going to be okay, and we're going to make it through this, and we're going to survive it. And so I see your story as this picture that we can relate to of in my life, even when sin happens and this wreck happens, and it all starts to come apart, God just carrying us through this and having the strength that you had in that moment. So I'll put a link into How Could a Loving God, because I think it gives us a really good answer as believers to understand the effect of sin and consequences in this world. My last question, and I'm glad you did a lot of the talking, because I couldn't have. So I've told this story a couple times, and each time I go. So, do you have any questions before I ask my last one?
Go ahead.
The last question, because we have moms who are also going through their own seasons,
But seasons can be good and bad, and so I want to say
Yes.
that when we were starting to develop Master Books, that it's good for any kind of season, and that's what's built into it, to have that flexibility. So if you're in a season that life is going grand, because sometimes it does, and you have all the time, you have all the ability, you don't have kids grieving where you have to stop school, you can take these rabbit trails, you can go deeper into it, you can do all of these things. But life is never this, and it's certainly never this. It's this. It has ups and it has downs.
Yep.
And so when you're talking about seasons, it's not always a bad season.
Right. It can, yeah, through all seasons.
Through all seasons.
Yeah.
And the Lord is with us through all seasons. And when you're called to homeschool, it's through all the seasons.
Yes. Yeah. And you're going to go through seasons. That's part of the human privilege, right? So my question, or what I'd like you to do, is to end us with, what would you say to a mom who may be in one of those hard seasons and she's homeschooling, and maybe even considering that the homeschooling side of it is maybe we need to just send the kids to school or whatever, whether it's a marriage issue or whatever. How would you address that?
It was a thought process that I had. And so how I talked with myself, right? First of all, I said we're going to give permissions. We're going to give permissions for crying. We're going to give permissions for days that we don't do work. We're going to give permissions for extra outside time. We're going to work in yoga. We're going to do something to make it be a little bit different and give ourselves an out for all of these feelings. Then I started to weigh, okay, what if I send him to school? If my kids would have been in school, they would have all been held back a full grade because they wouldn't have been able to finish. They wouldn't have learned how to get through a hard season. See, they're going to have hard seasons, and if they're not exposed to how to get through a hard season, they're not going to know how to do this. And then God really started, I have teacher friends, and God really, that are in public schools. And he started showing me what these teachers are teaching in public schools right now. And I started seeing that these 5-year-olds in kindergarten are receiving sex education classes from their teacher that do not match our standards for our moral standards. They don't match. They don't line up. There's all these shootings, all of these things that are happening. Now, that doesn't mean that it will not happen to us. We could be in a Walmart. El Paso knows that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's awful. It doesn't keep us from it. However, the more that I can keep it out, I need to be able to do that. I can't expect them to grow stronger in Christ while I'm saturating them with the world. And that's going to be more problems than just our hard season. Here you are, you're in a hard season, and you're going to bring in the hard seasons of everybody else in the 5th grade. You're going to bring in the hard seasons of all of their friends that spew all of their problems and not understanding that these are problems that you should talk to an adult. They want to go to their peers with their problems, and your kids want to help because you've told them they're helpers. You've ingrained into them how much they can be helpful to their friends and all of this. And then all of a sudden their friends are coming to them with very adult situations because we have cutting in schools, and we have relationships going on that little kids should not be a part of. And they're going to come and talk to your kid. And your kid's going to want to help because you raised them to help. And that is not their season. That's not. They get exposed to all of the other seasons as well. And so for me, I had to say, okay, would it be easier for me in my life to go ahead and send them to school? Yes. Mm-hmm. Did God call my life to be easy? No. He didn't tell me it was going to be easy to be a Christian. He didn't tell me that, oh, you're now protected from everything. It's all going to be good. Don't worry about it.
Did he tell you it was going to be easy to homeschool?
What?
Did he tell you it was going to be easy to homeschool?
No. You know, I grow with them. Mm-hmm. I grow with them every single day. I'm not the same person I was when we started homeschooling.
Mhm.
And I can't be. I can't be. I have to be a lifelong learner with them. I'm hoping that I'm training them up to be a lifelong learner. I'm hoping to tell them there's going to be all of these storms, and some days you're going to walk out with an umbrella in the middle of a tsunami, and you are not going to feel equipped. You're just not. But we have God, right? And he's like, got all the equipment, and he's going to give it to you. You got to talk with him. And so I was not going to be able to have that ability to teach them these things and sending them out 8 hours a day. And so I literally will sit down with them sometimes, and I'm like, today mommy's going to have a hard day. Mommy gets to cry all day long today. So just know that that's what mommy's going to do. And then they get to see me be vulnerable. They get to see me be human, and that's going to strengthen them.
Mhm.
So that's, I really feel like there was a moment where I thought sending him to school would be easier. I can then really focus on Jaden, and I can do physical therapy with him all day long until he's a Gumby, and he can do what he needs to do to get through this easier. But then, you know what, I walk in the room and I see my little girls laying in bed with Jaden and surrounding him. And Jaden wouldn't be as far as he is without all of his siblings around him, completely teasing him and joking with him and encouraging him. And so it would have been a mistake for my family to have done that. And I believe that right now when they're at home and they're getting into something, I don't always know everything, but I'm able to find it out quicker.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I'm able to see what's coming easier because I can identify the day. And yesterday was really hard and today was really hard. But if they were at school having a really hard day, their teacher could have just overlooked it and said, okay, well, they're going to take a break and go to recess. And then I would not have gotten a response at home of saying, hey, they've had a really hard day, until they've had like a really hard month.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then I've got a lot of backpedaling to do. And so this empowers me as a parent to be able to know where my kids are at, even if it's hard, even if it's rough. My 7-year-old, she does her best schoolwork at 10 o'clock at night. Schools aren't open then.
Right.
So
Mm-hmm.
that's what I know that about my child, though. I know that about my child. And parents who send their kids off to school, there's a lot of stuff they don't know. And and even though my kids are with me all the time, there's still stuff I don't know. However, I'm going to know a lot more. And that's my job as a parent.
Yeah.
So, I mean, your seasons, you're going to have hard seasons. You're going to have seasons that you seriously question if you can get a next breath. I know. I've been there. I didn't know. Yesterday I thought, how did I get through 18 months? The wreck seems like it's yesterday. How did 18 months go by? And here's the thing. If you can't make it through with your kids with the hard seasons, you're not going to be able to celebrate the good ones. Mm-hmm. Not in the same manner. The hard things come so that the good things are going to be that much more valuable to you. If everything's good all of the time, it's gonna feel like that's normal.
Yeah.
And so I'm able to celebrate things with my kids more. And sometimes the celebration is the fact that my 7-year-old said the word was instead of was. And that's the celebration, right? That's a big deal for that day. Mm-hmm. And if I can teach them to celebrate things like that, then they're going to really know how to celebrate the good stuff. And if I can teach them to get through these hard things, then whatever comes at them in the world, they will also be equipped for that. And that's what I have to do.
Awesome. Well, I definitely thank you for joining us and for being vulnerable and transparent. And you're part of this group, Moms of Master Books. And so I know there's been a lot of responses for people to just sharing with you. So I know you'll look through those as well.
I will.
So this video, we will make sure, I'm going to cut it off because I want to make sure that we can encode it and put it up on YouTube and everything, because I really love the testimony. But hopefully we will hear more from Dyan and all that God is doing and the healing that continues to take place. And one of the most awesome things is he cares about our eternity. And so while we're talking about the present and the physical, he sees far more glorious days ahead for all of us, which is the awesome hope of Jesus Christ in our lives. So again, Dyan, thank you so much for joining us today. It's awesome. And to the Moms of Master Books, I pray this was a blessing to you. I pray that you're encouraged and know that no matter what season you're in, that Jesus Christ, our hope, is with us. And we do have a calling to, the moment we become parents, the moment we sign up, we have a calling in our lives to train them up and to raise them to follow and pursue him. All right. God bless you guys. Have a great Thursday.